Alright, let's just do a dry run with no water, with no nothing. Here we go. It's happened to the best of us. Cruising through a race, and on the final lap, this happens. Alright, here comes the brigade. Here comes the brigade.
Oh, you're about to get fucked up.
Yeah, here, okay, yep, the brigade's here. Yep, noted, duly noted. Or even worse, this. Oh god, oh my god, I got assaulted. What the fuck? The finish line was right there, and I got screwed out of a hard-earned victory. Now, these are just two examples of what I hope are many in this analysis. The original incident wasn't recorded, but this same Mario Kart magic happened on this night. Due to the pandemic lockdowns and restrictions, my friends and I have resorted to online gaming as a means of getting together, and our current game of choice has been Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch. It's a new way for all of us to yell and scream at each other, and I for one am enjoying it. Mostly. I hate to toot my own horn here, but with all things in life, a skill gap exists among us who play regularly, and I'm on the better end of the group. I've dedicated hours and hours to Super Circuit, Double Dash, Mario Kart DS, 7, and 8. I'm not in the realm of speedrunner technical ability, but I don't slam into the wall on a regular basis, is all I'm trying to say. More on that later. One game night, I was getting irrationally frustrated that I was constantly getting screwed out of wins. I know, it's Mario Kart, who the hell cares? There's no competitive scene for it. Well, damn it, I care! I'm a stupidly competitive person, so if there's something that I'm good at, I will push myself to be the best among others. That's just who I am. After a string of complaints throughout the night, I was rightfully ridiculed and teased, though. Being that it wasn't what I needed to hear at the moment, I rage quit and called it a night. But that whole thing got me thinking, how often do we experience that Mario Kart magic? It certainly varies from person to person, given one's skill level and how often they're in first, but I wanted to break it down. I wanted to see if my complaining that night was justified, or just me being on my high horse complaining about nothing. This is my search for the shafted races of Mario Kart. Now, before I begin, I just want to say first that I am by no means a math whiz. I barely passed my math courses all throughout high school and even in my one-year university. Yeah, I'm just a film major. Yeah, I went to film school, what of it? Anyway, that's enough about me. Let me reiterate my goal here. I want to find out how often I get shafted playing Mario Kart that ultimately warranted complaining about it to my friends. I don't want to look like a total sore loser. I want the statistical evidence to show for it, so I'm not that sore of a loser. First, let me define what it means to be shafted in Mario Kart. To get shafted in Mario Kart is to be negatively influenced by forces outside of your control within the realms of the game. I want to differentiate this from getting bullied, where the player is simply bombarded with items without any chance of winning. Getting bullied happens throughout the course of the race. Even on top of the item probability system that the game has, the RNG can sometimes be brutal, which leads to these shafted and bullied races. Let's draw up a hypothetical hit chart to demonstrate. So this would be a bullied race, and then this would be a shafted race. See the difference? But my complaining stems more from getting bombarded by items on the final lap. That's why I'm adding this stipulation. The player must need a 75% leading percentage of the race on top of getting hit by a large assortment of items. The leading percentage is calculated by taking the total time I was leading the race, converting it into seconds, and dividing it by the total time it took to complete the race, which I also convert into seconds. Say I was leading for 40 seconds at varying points throughout the race, and then it took me 105 seconds to complete it. Dividing the two up would give me a leading percentage of 38.09, far from what is considered shafted territory. So, what would something in shafted territory look like? It would look like this. The leading percentage, conversely known in my charts and documents as average time in first, is 96.22%. With the leading percentage that high, losing the race, and getting hit by 3 items on the final lap, that's considered a shafted race. Why is the stipulation for item hits at 3? I tend to notice with the amount of Mario Kart that I've played for this video and in my off hours, all the bullshit happens the moment you cross the finish line into lap 3. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe brought back double items, for better or for worse, that's completely subjective. But with this reintroduction, players can stock up on items to either play defensively or offensively. Playing defensively is more catered for those in higher placings, holding onto items to defend themselves from those behind them, like holding onto bananas or shells. And that's where I want to focus my attention. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, on top of bringing back double items, also brings back coins as obtainable items from boxes as a balancing act, so that players aren't always given the ability to defend themselves from items, which can be the most infuriating part. It's uncommon to be in first with 2 items to protect yourself from the barrage that is to come. To have 2 items by your side as protection is the buffer room I want to give for this categorization. Either you have no protection and lose out completely, or you're just completely swamped and are just dead inside. So that's the basis for what I'm considering a shafted race. Leading percentage of 75% or more, losing, and getting hit by 3 items or more on the final lap. That being said, more categories must be developed to further justify that my complaining was warranted or not. While getting bombarded by items on the final lap is annoying as all hell, maybe there's something else in my performance as a Mario Kart racer that influences the results that I was blind to as an angry kart racer. That's where the rest of what I'm coining the advanced analytics of Mario Kart comes in. There are 2 additional subcategories I want to add here that tell more about a race result, with a quick glance. Along with a shafted race, I want to add what is called a dominated race and a stolen race. A dominated race is a race result where the player held a 75% leading percentage or greater and won, essentially leading for the majority of the race and no one behind him could even contend for the top spot. A stolen race is a race result where the player held a 15% leading percentage or less and won, a race where potentially items played a huge part in the player's victory. Second, drifting is an integral mechanic in Mario Kart, producing boosts to push yourself forward ahead of the competition. Knowing how often the player utilizes drifts in their skill set can add a layer to their overall playstyle. In order to break this down, I took each race recorded and calculated the amount of turns in each individual race. The reason for this is to know how often one drifts per race in relation to which race specifically was chosen. Here's an example. Let's take this Toad Harbor race. There are 9 turns per lap and a total would be 27 turns the entire race. And then, I would drift on 24 of these turns. A turn is determined with the change of direction on the track, or turn separated by a straight line. You can further break down drifts into 3 subcategories: mini drifts, blue, and then the drifts, orange, and super drifts, purple. These can further give depth to how often one drifts and which drifts are used throughout the race. 24 drifts on Toad Harbor become 24 successful drifts out of the 27 turns. On the flip side, there are unsuccessful or failed drifts. These are interrupted throughout its execution due to hitting walls, falling off the race, or driving off-road, and then that would be considered a failed drift. The kart was cancelled from drifting and returned to standard driving. Finally, the obstacle categories of stats. These ones are rather self-explanatory. Hit race obstruction. These include hitting walls, driving off-road, or other obstacles like thwomps or this musical note. Times fell. How often does one fall off the race? Next, let's return to the hit by item count mentioned earlier. This still remains the total amount of times that item hits a player. A potential outlier includes bloopers. I'm including this because bloopers hinder your vision and turning accuracy, which could lead someone to drive off the course. I'm also including bananas that are laid out on the track already. If you run into those, that's hit by item. The hit by item category can be broken down further to tell the story of each race. Times hit by blue shell. How often are you targeted by blue shells? Times hit holding nothing. Were you bombarded with items without any means to protect yourself? Times an item was stolen. How often a boo took your protection away from you or a critical mushroom? Then, for the obstacle stats pertaining to first that further prove how badly one gets shafted. Times hit holding a coin, times received coin, and times item protected in first. As I mentioned earlier, getting coins in first serves as a means to balance out the first player from constantly receiving items to protect themselves from those trying to catch up. It's a blessing and a curse. One can simply just receive a ton of coins and get bombarded at the worst possible times. Conversely, those trying to catch up can shrink their lead and swoop in for a stolen race. So there you have it. The statistical categories that A, prove how often I get shafted in Mario Kart, and B, highlight one's Mario Kart skill with all the variables considered throughout a race. In order to get a full sense of how often shafted races occur, I played a whole lot of Mario Kart over the course of a few weeks. It may not seem like a lot, but having to play, record, analyze, and categorize all these races took a lot of time. I played a total of 26 150 races and 34 200cc races, varying between randoms online and my group of friends that teased me for complaining. Alright, now it's time to unveil the data. How many of these races are shafted races? Now that's quite the bunch. Let's look deeper at each of these races. Our journey begins in Toad Harbor. In this race, I finished 4th with an 89.40 leading percentage. In this race, I completed 88.88 of my drifts without any failed attempts. Being in first managing my items, I wasn't able to utilize all of the item boxes at my disposal, as I had 2 bananas keeping me safe throughout the first half of the race. Then, midway through lap 2, I deflected a red shell with one of my bananas, and to replace that banana was a coin. Great! Now on to lap 3. Boosting off the boat, I deflect another red shell with my last banana from earlier. There's a double item box coming up, and I can only hope that both items will defend me to secure this victory. And then the first item hit is a blooper. For me in this instance, it holds fine for about 2 seconds, until lightning strikes. I hate all the items practically equally, but if I had to rank them, lightning is the second worst item below green shells. Lightning drops all of your items and impedes your progress. Here, I drop both my items and now I'm wide open for an attack. Oh god, a blue shell. With nothing to protect me, I'm practically screwed. And there's the blue shell. Surprisingly, I held my lead for a brief moment until someone zoomed right past me. Thankfully, they don't use the on-track boosts and I'm able to start my drift and pass them by drafting. On the final straight before the finish line, it looks like I may have survived the shafting. But my most hated item comes to attack me, which spells my doom. Another quick aside here. What's up with those damn green shells? No matter what angle they bounce off walls, it seems to adjust and propel right into an oncoming racer. And why is it always gotta be me? The angle it bounces doesn't seem natural at all, and I hate it. I truly hate it. Why? Ugh. So this is the first shafted race of the study. everything coming at once on the final lap. It is indeed a shafting. Let's move on to the next race, Wildwoods. God, this one aggravated me. Let's just look at the stat chart, shall we? On the surface, finishing second with a 76.15 leading percentage isn't bad, and getting hit 5 times, finishing second, that's pretty damn good, do you think? But this is why we break races down in this scenario. If you look further, I deflected 3 items while I'm first. You want to know the worst part about this? It was all thanks to a triple red shell using up my triple bananas. Unbelievable! Then even before I can get another item box to potentially protect myself, a 4th red shell comes out of nowhere to smack me across the face. 4 red shells! It can't get any worse, right? Right? The blue shell's coming. This green shell isn't gonna do shit for me. How could it? So the blue shell explodes on my face. Great, lovely, fantastic. A 5th red shell? Are you kidding me? Please stop the bullying. A 6th! Thankfully, I wasn't stunned, so it didn't hit me. Oh, good. Look, second place. You're telling me this game gave this guy 2 straight triple red shells? What the fuck is up with that? All right. There's still some race left. Maybe with some luck, I can steer this my way. I'll get a blooper. And I would run right into his red shell. God fucking damn it. Are you shitting me? A 7th red shell? Come on, let me just finish the finish line. God damn, thank God. In total, 8 red shells were thrown at me in the second half of that race. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of reliving this one. This had to be the worst one, right? Well, for now. We're now into the 200cc races. This one's just funny just because of how much of a clusterfuck that final lap was. I can't even be mad about this one. A blue shell hits me on lap 2. No big deal. I still have the lead. But I don't have anything to protect myself for the final lap for a bit. And a red shell clanks the back of my head just before my item pops up. Great! That's fine. Still a lot of race left. And this is where the clusterfuck starts. I'm just gonna play it out. Right at the end, she earned herself a stolen race and gave me a shafted race. I have more to say about this race in particular later, but for now, this is my 3rd shafted race under my belt. Those 3 races are 100% shafted races through and through, no doubt about it. But these next 2 have some contention to them. One is considered by definition, and the other one... Let's just get to the first one. Electrodrome. Electrodrome? Electrodrome. What kind of name is that? This one by definition and what I said earlier about bloopers considered as a hit by item, it fits the bill. But at this point, can this really be considered a shafted race just by principle? A blue shell hits me midway through the final lap, and the other items that hit me are bloopers. I only really lost this race because of a lucky mushroom held by the guy behind me to earn himself a stolen race. Like, can I really be mad about that? By definition, it remains. But it's debatably just a lost race. Now finally, we have Water Park. I'm not going to show you the footage for this one. Why? Because I do not want to relive this one. This one is even worse than the other one. But the reason why this one is in contention, because I only had a 68.82 leading percentage. But let's just look at the lap charts. Yeah, trust me, this one's real. It actually happened. I haven't emotionally recovered from this. I'm still crying on the inside, please help me. Once again, I only held a 68.82 leading percentage, but got demolished on the final lap. Should this be considered a shafted race? Well, because I'm still in absolute shambles, I'm counting it irrationally. So those are the shafted races calculated in this study. 2 under 150cc and 3 under 200cc. Now that I have all the stats calculated from each race, let's get to the question whether my complaining was warranted, given the amount of times I was shafted. What I have here is what I dream of having for Mario Kart. Imagine going down to your stats and seeing these instead. These paint a more vivid image on how I perform playing online Mario Kart. So let's dig into it. First, I have a percentage of races shafted highlighted in this traditional orange. And for 150cc, the two races give me a 3.84 shafted race percentage. While on the 200cc side of things, I have a 5.88 shafted race percentage. Now, does that warrant complaining? I hate to do this to myself, but no, absolutely not. Especially given the dominated race percentage in both difficulties respectively. Yeah, I have absolutely no right to complain. So let's get to the bigger picture here. Sure, these stats look good, but these numbers alone, even not being totals, have to be put in some sort of context. Right now, I'm someone who doesn't hit the wall often. I get hit by items around 3 times per race, use drifting more than half of the time depending on what difficulty, and I have a respectable leading percentage. But in order to get a full sense of the scale of these numbers, we need to compare it to other racers. So that's where we get into part 3 of this analysis, the 6-race tournament study. Remember the Hyrule Circuit race that I got shafted on? Well, that was one of the 6 races of the 6-race study for 200cc. This is just a small sample size to develop some sort of context for a handful of driver stats, but I think it paints a good enough image to how these stats can work in comparison to others, while setting a basis in what's considered good or bad. In the chart of averages, we can see how the statistical categories can separate and differ racers from one another. In terms of results, it makes sense that those with a higher average time in first are those with the higher average points earned, despite room for players playing for stolen races, such as those who lurk in second place, waiting for blue shells to arrive simply swooping in for the win. By the way, if you play like that, I hate you. That's all. But what's more interesting here is the relationship between successful drifting rate, failed drifting rate, and hit race obstruction. Because I count slamming into walls, driving off-road, or hitting thwomps as a race hit obstruction, it's natural that some of the failed drifts lead to adding up the hit race obstruction stat. Let's compare Rosalina and Toad here. In regards to their drifting ability, while Rosalina has a higher successful drift rate, their unsuccessful drift rate are close. But the difference here is a hit race obstruction, with Rosalina averaging 6.17 hits per race, while Toad averages 13.50 hits per race, despite having a significantly lower times hit by item rate. What this tells me is, between these two players, the major factor separating these two apart is the hit race obstruction, as well as a times fallen average. This tells me that the Toad player unfortunately was struggling through the 200cc races. The low times hit by item means they were doing most of the damage, with items like lightning, bullet bills, and being granted mushrooms to catch up. Now let's swing over to the Cat Peach player. Among the 6 players, she has the lowest failed drift rate, but also the lowest successful drift rate. This tells me that the player doesn't utilize drifting a whole lot as part of their skill set. It follows especially for 200cc, having more control of your kart not drifting than partaking. A clear hierarchy can be seen among these 6 players for 200cc. The relationship between staying the course, utilizing drifts in an efficient manner, correlates to one's placings. That being said, how about the players that are able to stay the course? What's the story between them? Well, just like with Toad and Rosalina, the same can be said here between Villager, Donkey Kong, Toadette, and Rosalina. About a 2.67 hit race obstruction difference splits these 4, but is 2.67 hits per race that big of a difference? The story now is the successful drift rates, with Villager leading the group at 54.75 and the lowest at 30.73, a difference of 24.02. The extra speed boost from drifts is the most telling aspect here. Now those are the statistical categories put in context of other racers. Even if it's just a 6-race sample size of this group, I still have no rational right to complain about getting shafted, especially if it stands at a rate below 5%. It should be noted that these players' stats are in context mostly among themselves. If these metrics were tracking all players at all times, having playing against different people online, those stats would be a better representation of the player than within a smaller player pool. Now, before I close, there's a couple of things I want to address. The first thing is in regards to the total turns calculations. Given the anti-gravity track design of Mario Kart 8 and Yoshi's Valley, some tracks have a varying degree of accuracy for drift rate, as some turns could be debated whether they are multiple turns or not, or part of a larger maze like Yoshi's Valley. There are some tracks where you have turns like these, and you have some turns that are like these. Then it's a question whether they are the same type of turn. The philosophy behind determining what type of turn is mainly a change of direction on the track, but also whether a straight wasn't between turns despite being, say, a left or right turn. I'm willing to omit inaccuracies with the turn and drift rates as a fault of the calculations. Another inconsistency I want to address is the hit race obstruction and failed drift calculations. I can recall moments when calculating my data in races by marking hit race obstructions as failed drifts, despite the drift itself not being interrupted, especially in 200cc because the kart momentum wasn't lost. Those are the two prominent categories that feature some sort of inaccuracy or inconsistency, mainly due to misinterpretation. I admit those mistakes, but at the same time conclude that these metrics are hypothetical in calculating one's Mario Kart skill that I wish were present in the current game. So with all that data and my question answered from the beginning, I've been mulling over the bigger picture with giving so much time to this, and for those who watched up to this point. My initial approach was one of a competitive esports lens, to egotistically prove how good I am despite not having the results I wanted because of forces outside of my control. It's worth questioning now, going forward, whether items should be considered in a competitive Mario Kart environment or completely removed. In a scenario where items are removed completely, Mario Kart is thrown in the same world as simulation racers, min-maxing customized karts for the best results while having the best inputs in races to have the best times. It becomes a speedrunning fest and not an arcade racer that it's known to be. That can be enjoyable, but it completely changes the landscape of what Mario Kart is about. It becomes just the time trial mode. On the flip side, items enable degenerate playstyles where results are the only thing that matter, regardless of how you get there. I've seen players online lurk just behind first and wait for the cursed blue shell to knock the first player out of the picture and swoop in for the win. I've also seen players sandbag right when the race starts to give themselves the best items to cruise to the finish line. So, weeks removed from initially starting this editorial, I've been casually playing Mario Kart on my off hours because, it's a quick jump in, jump out game, unlike FPS games that I used to play, and then my poor performances would just lead me to rage quit. Those playstyles I mentioned earlier are something I've noticed in the past few weeks, and for someone that strives for consistency in performances, not to get constantly shafted in each race, items in Mario Kart have been a real thorn on my side. But after doing some thinking and talking with my other friends about this, I finally reached my answer. Mario Kart is meant to be fun, not fair. Items are a way to balance out those with varying skills. On top of that, unlike Smash Bros. Where items can pop up at any time during a battle, Mario Kart has a system implemented that triggers item probabilities in specific scenarios, so the randomness is dampened. Look, as much as I would love for these metrics to be in place for future releases to pamper my stupid Mario Kart ego, ultimately, they're not necessary.